This is the Sweet Song Podcast, where we unwrap your favorite songs. I'm your host, Kristi York Wooten, and on this episode, Robert Schwartzman, musician, actor, filmmaker, and director of Hung Up on a Dream, the Zombies documentary. This is the Sweet Song Podcast, and I'm super excited to have Robert Schwartzman here, a favorite musician of mine. Thank you, Robert, for being here.
Of course.
We're here today to talk about a couple of different things. First of all, the Zombies documentary, Hung Up on a Dream, which you directed, which is getting a lot of buzz. A lot of folks are watching it. We're going to talk about that. And then also just catch up with you a little bit on some other projects you might have going on, a little reminiscent on some fun Rooney times as well. So we'll do that. And thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Anytime we can talk about the zombies and this movie we got to make, it's a great moment to share it. So
Yeah. I mean, let's start right there because I want to know, everybody knows you're from a Los Angeles movie family. And my theory is that movie kids grow up around adults kind of more than regular kids, maybe in the suburbs or something. Did that have an impact on you musically? Were you like around somebody who was like listening to the Zombies when you were a kid or anything? How did you first hear about them?
I don't know exactly what the point was where I really discovered this band, but I grew up watching a lot of old movies, like a lot of great, considered like kind of great classic films. And usually a lot of these classic films are filled with really memorable music or music that obviously like a great score enhances the experience emotionally of the movie you're watching. You're not really even supposed to be aware of a good score. It just it feels right. The movie feels right. But I watched a lot of musical theater growing up. I lived in a home where there was a lot of classical music being played because my mom's father was a conductor and a composer, and he was in an orchestra when she grew up. That I think has an effect on you when you're a kid listening to a lot of classical music because when you hear strings and classical elements in rock and roll music or pop music, I could really identify it. So it just kind of maybe brought everything together for me in a band like the Zombies. A band like ELO is very orchestral. Their name has the word orchestra in it. But Rod Argent's background as a songwriter and Chris White, I think they obviously grew up. He says it in the documentary where he was in the in the choir, singing a lot of traditional choir music, and he was exposed to a lot of classically arranged, orchestrated music, and that had an impact on him as in terms of song arrangements. And then he was influenced by rock and roll, so I don't know. The band had all the things that I love about really good music. I mean, I love short pop songs. I love songs that just get right to the point and just have something so memorable about them. I love when songs are crafted in a way that just have twists and turns musically that really keep you on your edge of your seat, meaning that they're not completely so expected. Everything they're doing isn't so expected. I feel like the Zombies have something unusual about the music, but so yeah, as a kid, I just listened to a lot of oldies but goodies. I loved a lot of 50s pop music, sort of the stuff that they were influenced by. I naturally kind of grew up listening to a lot of my life. So in the movie, in this Hung Up on a Dream Zombies documentary, when they're speaking of the things they were influenced by, Buddy Holly, Ricky Nelson, Chuck Berry, the Everly Brothers, these are things that I grew up listening to, just found myself loving. So I don't know. It's weird why we gravitate towards the music we do. We all have our ways of listening to music, and I'm a pretty wide range of music listener. But Zombies just grabbed me right away. I love British Invasion, and they're one of the leaders of British Invasion. I think they're one of the defining acts of that era. So yeah, I started Rooney in high school because of listening to the Zombies. And then flash forward years later, I turned from musician into making movies. And then I got to make a movie about the band that got me into music in the first place. So it's kind of interesting full circle for me.
I love the full circle element and also kind of the multi-generational element that's going on here. I think usually if you have British rockers from the 60s, you're going to have somebody who grew up with them who is the same age or maybe one generation apart, but this is like multiple generations apart. So there's so many nuggets from the documentary that are just priceless. What was kind of the most difficult nugget to extract from them or to make
Yeah.
it special?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest challenge overall was just that we didn't have a lot of archival to work with. And a lot of times, if you're telling us, I mean, this is over 60 years of a music career. So you would kind of really want to grab some kind of amazing archive that has a collection of everything nice and tidy, so you can really lean into it. So we didn't really have, we weren't dealt the easiest hand to make a movie about a band that just didn't have this great video footage of back in the day and stuff like that. We had a couple of moments where we got lucky, which was like Chris White's family had held on to a lot of personal items from their experience in the band, and they had an early like the guys played like a youth club. I think they said they played like a birthday party or something, and it's them in the early days playing. It's very homemade looking. Like those moments are really important for, I think, for music film to really take the audience to that place and time. Without that stuff, you have to sort of fake it a little bit and cheat it to make it seem like you're there and use other archival and make it feel of the same era. And we did. We were able to slot in some video footage over storytelling that makes it feel like we're there. And it was of the time. It just isn't those guys. That was challenging. But the nuggets you're speaking of are the things that I would call like the conceptual stuff that we put together in the background and shot with intention. That would be the church opening. I don't know what it was, but I really I love the song The Way I Feel Inside, and it's famously an a cappella song for half of it. And there's an organ behind it, and Rod plays a lot of organ on Zombies album. So I thought, how cool would it be there aren't a lot of, not every church has like a working pipe organ. So there was one in Brooklyn. A friend of mine knew somebody at the church, and he was able to get us access to shoot there. So that was like this magical opening, was to put them up at the pipe organ and have Collins singing The Way I Feel Inside a cappella. It was recorded live. We did it a few times, and I wanted to do these slow pushes, and we did it in and out, like so you could see the slow push and the pullback. But we ended up really making that the opening because it's such a striking visual to start there. And obviously for fans and even non-fans, even people who are becoming fans, I think you really want to create a cinematic, for me, and a cinematic experience, something very memorable visually. We shot all these like jukebox moments where there's a jukebox turning on and off and a hand selecting music or turning the vinyl over. That was stuff that we shot. Those were little ways to kind of keep the audience engaged while we were introducing a lot of the songs from their career. For me, I love to create a theme, and I love to create something you as an audience member can sort of fall back on or rely on visually, some familiarity in themes. And for me, it was the sort of using of activating a song, whether it was like a 8-track or a vinyl, turning like you'll notice through the Odyssey and Oracle section, we're playing songs from Odyssey on the vinyl, right, physically. So yeah, those are the things that I would say were really special. And then obviously getting the guys together back in the room where they recorded Odyssey and Oracle as a group. They were all there, the four guys. And then Paul, the spirit of Paul kind of being around our film and supporting our film. His family was incredible. His daughter came down to film with us at Abbey Road. So, very grateful that we had everybody on board to make this. And Hugh flew out from Spain. We were able to get the original masters to Odyssey and Oracle, and we put them on the board at Abbey Road and listened to them. So yeah, this was like goosebumps on your back kind of stuff for, I think, any musician to kind of see. But I think this, at the end of the day, I think people feel like, I always I always feel like a great documentary, it's like you cover the subject, but then you cover this atmosphere around the subject, the emotional atmosphere that surrounds these people. Because I don't know how you feel about it, but I need something emotionally to make me want to care and invest myself in any story. And for me, it's like we cover obviously the plot points of their life, which are very entertaining just to see the ups and downs of their lives. But the sort of way they stuck it out for the love of music, the way that music was the glue, friendship was the glue. It's not a band that hated each other's guts. It's a band that really cared about it, respected each other. Even in the hard times, they managed to find some kind of interesting respect and balance. So it's a great lesson I think it's a great lesson for just us as people to just to really look at what's truly important, to define our lives by the things that really matter, so.
Well, and you brought up so many great points that I wanna follow up on. One is, when I was talking about nuggets, I love that you gave me what you gave, which is all the really beautiful visual things that happen and locations, like you mentioned in Abbey Road and the church. But I was talking about more nuggets of little truths and things that they said that, Colin and I were talking the other day that, you have to be vulnerable to reveal some of the things that they talked about, especially some of the things that Colin mentioned about, due to publishing, that certain members of the band weren't making as much money and that, they were having to go find regular jobs at a certain point. I mean, it's really fascinating that they did come through all those times. So what was maybe the favorite thing or kind of the most vulnerable moment that you saw when you were capturing it all?
Well, I mean, it was I was interviewing them sort of, on camera, so it was my job to kind of try to get them to open up. And, sometimes, like even us right now in this conversation, there may be we all have ways of falling back on the things that we're familiar like used to doing in conversation. So sometimes we're used to telling stories the same way, especially in press interviews. I mean, even if you have media training, in media training, you're meant to get to the point quickly and not like dilly dally. And you're meant to obviously restate things like the question or restate the name of the movie or the band we're talking about over and over again, just in case anyone tunes in the middle of this. We're talking about the Zombies, Hung Up on a Dream, everybody. And I'm Robert Schwartzman. But yeah, like you kind of like need to break people down a little bit. So usually time can do that sometimes if give them time. So I noticed that, Rod is a very articulate. They're all super, super smart guys. Like they're very well read. They're very gracious, and there's a certain kindness that they have. You want to find vulnerability in the stories, so you just have to take time to go back through questions again and again to kind of get there. And the more you double back on stuff, you might hear it in a different way. They might have forgotten something they added. But I think in all of that and the way I like to talk to people, you find people maybe start to trust you a little more. And in that sort of trust, you can maybe get someone to be a little more vulnerable with you. So I think we eventually got there in these interviews. I thought there were two moments that stuck with me in terms of, I mean, they all spoke about the ups and the downs. Sometimes people don't want to talk about the downs. They want to just talk about when things were great. And maybe that means they're just not quite settled in themselves about what the downs were. Maybe there's a little bit of like blocking it out because it was traumatic for them in some way. But these guys, I think they're pretty balanced in terms of their emotional state. Like they accept when they didn't have anything and they accepted when they had things in a very humble kind of way. So I think it's a personality thing. I think time has given them an understanding and acceptance of like their lives. Maybe if I spoke to them 40 years ago would have been a different conversation. But where our story is different is because, it's not uncommon. It's probably less common that a band had huge hits and sustained those hits and never had to get a regular job, right? Like that story is probably less common that you're on a private jet your whole career, right? So there probably are a lot of bands that had big hits and that, especially in the 60s, that had like a hit song and then you never heard from them again, right? So those people probably had to go off and find a new career path, right? We happen to be focused on one of those artists called the Zombies, but what's different about them is that they made an album that totally didn't work in its day. And then 2 years later, because somebody went to a record store and record shopping and championed it all over again in the US, that same album had a song on it that went to number one years later. And the band had all gone off to different lives and jobs. Like that's pretty rare. And then for that album to then catch fire after feeling to them like a dud, to go on to be considered one of the greatest albums ever made, that's really interesting. That's unique. And then to have copycat artists touring off your name, pretending to be you, is pretty bizarre. But then to have the lead singer of the band and some of the bandmates come back to music and find success so many years later in a whole new kind of way, unimaginable. and for them to go in different paths and find their own version of their success, that's really unique too. That not every band has that kind of story. So I think that's really special. And then in terms of vulnerability, Colin hadn't never told the story about being adopted. Being adopted, this a lot of people might see this movie having a similar story of they were adopted and they got to, be with a new family or whatever it is. So, people live this is part of this is part of our culture, but for Colin to sort of open up about it in a way that he never has, to understand sort of what's going on with him emotionally because he's such considered one of the best singers kind of ever. How do we get Colin Blunstone like as a world that we were given this great talent? Well, these are the building blocks that gave us Colin. So he carries these emotions with him and they come out in his voice maybe subconsciously, right? But it's a unique we get a time and place, a sense of history of what it was like for people to have gone through the war in England and these kinds of things. So interesting little bits of history. And look, I really love that, Rod is very much a very by the book kind of a storyteller. There was moments of vulnerability when he spoke about his regrets of not being home with his family very much and being on the road a lot and being such a workaholic when his kids were really I thought that was a very sweet, vulnerable, honest moment that it really hit me because I toured a lot in my life and I have now little kids. So it makes me think about wanting to be present with my family. These kinds of values we pass on. So that really hit me hard and it's always like a wake up call for me. But look, that's the beauty of storytelling and music and films and art is you can pass on ideas and emotions to audiences and make them rethink their lives, right? It's to provoke new thoughts and new ways of approaching our own existence. So,
Well, I do think you did a great job of getting to those stories, and I think you just gave us the wonderful highlights reel of so many things that are in the film, and the fact that you were able to get Rod to open up, Colin to open up, the other guys to open up, and I wanted to bring it back too to some of the things you mentioned that people don't know. Maybe that there were copycat bands out there, and the part where, Colin has to go by another name, like Neil MacArthur, because,
that whole line's
he
so good.
can't even be himself.
I
But
know.
when I was speaking with him about sort of that early solo era of his stuff, just after being Neil MacArthur, we talked about his touring with ELO, and I know you have that in common with him because you performed with ELO last year, and I saw
Yeah.
the show. Tell me a little bit about that experience, kind of be a full circle moment, because that happened after you had made or started working on the film, right?
That was so bizarre and so cool. Like, cause I love ELO so much and I got to meet Jeff Lynne many years ago and hang out with him. He came to see Rooney play, which is so weird when you're like playing a show and you can see on the balcony like Jeff Lynne like sitting there. You're like, oh my God, he's watching me play. I hope I sound good. But yeah, like Jeff was very kind to me. We play, we just like went and hung out at a studio. He was I think he liked that I loved classical music and like that I like, early, like we jammed on Everly Brothers songs together. I think he just saw that I was influenced by a lot of these early pop songs that I think he really also loved growing up. So there was a connection in terms of influences. But he invited Rooney out to do his farewell, his last ELO, because ELOs, as all the fans maybe watching this know, they don't tour all the time. So it's like very cool. Every so often, Jeff would get up and go tour. So this was the last go at it in the US, and he could have picked any band. He picked Rooney to open for him, and I thought that was a really huge moment for me personally as an artist. Bizarre as you said, like I had just finished the Zombies documentary, and one of the storylines is that Colin's first solo record was opening for ELO on their first tour. So it's just so bizarre. I spent years making this movie, gotten close to Colin Blunstone. He opened for ELO. He tells a story. Their first tour, flash forward, I'm doing ELO's last tour. It's pretty cool. Like very cool. Like very strange how like things work, but like just an honor to be doing that. So it was a great tour though. It was really special.
Yeah, one of the things that, and I believe that the ELO touring. I mean, I haven't heard recently. I hope Jeff Lynne is doing okay. I know he was ill and missed the kind of final one of the final shows in London, so hopefully he's doing better. But the ELO thing, getting back to of course, they do have orchestra in the name, Electric Light Orchestra, but give me some of your memories of hearing them as a kid. I mean, I think their heyday was before you were born, maybe, but tell me a little bit about, like, maybe some early memories of hearing that, because that's probably a
ELO?
wake.
Yeah. I don't know when well, I think I just love great songs. I've just always been a song person, so I usually my early days of buying and I was buying CDs, right? When I was growing up, I didn't have vinyl. But I was still of an era where you bought an album. You didn't buy I mean, you could go single shopping, but I was still buying an album. Just even if I liked one song, I would buy the album. But usually I bought greatest hits albums, which is probably a lot of people who are big music collectors would probably shake their head at me and go like, "You're buying greatest hits. You got to buy the album, dude." But I just strangely, I kind of maybe just I grew up in a certain slot where like there were a lot of greatest hits compilations coming out and that had all the stuff that I really wanted to hear over and over again. And if I wasn't like collecting albums. I was so young at that time, but so I kept hearing. And then ELO, I got really into their albums because ELO has a lot of great albums. They're all very different. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the early days really was, but there's an album called Out of the Blue that I know specifically for me meant a lot to me. I listen to Out of the Blue a lot. There's a song called I think it's called Standing in the Rain, which was a big one for me. Like the arrangements on that and where it goes. You know what it is? It's just I think I like dramatic music, and even the Zombies have dramatic parts in their music, so there's a bit of, like, visual it's very visual for me, their music. You could close your eyes and see the sort of world playing out visually. So it's like because I love movies and I love music and they sort of go together for me, that music tends to be very visual for me in terms of how I write it but ELO is all over the place. I mean, they went through more proggy into more like disco-y influenced, and they did play those songs on the tour into some real easy albums, like using more drum machines and synths. And so it's interesting to watch bands, especially someone like Jeff Lynne is such a studio rat that like you could tell Jeff was probably buying the new technology of this. He was probably buying new synths when it came out and using it to write songs and then putting it on album. There are those artists that were really you could hear their recording production was evolving with technology. At a certain point, Jeff, then I think then I think he kind of went a little bit back into just classic ELO with like that album called Zoom that came out in 2001, which I saw him play live. He performed it live at CBS Studios. He did like a Zoom live in a studio, but like I think he settled back into like classic ELO with that album as opposed to just trying to make like a modern day techno album or some crazy whatever like some rock record or something. But yeah, so just smart songwriting, smart arrangements. I mean, watching ELO play live on tour every night was just like, oh my God. Like, it's kind of weird because we did so many shows together. It's weird. At a certain point, you're like, oh, ELO's playing. I'll catch him tomorrow night. But you're like, it's like you've seen him so many times, you take for granted like how special this is. But also when you tour with a band, it's so hectic sometimes getting in and out of there that you just get so caught up in logistics. You can't just be a fan in the audience watching them like most fans are. But yeah, I can't imagine Jeff and his team picking songs for the farewell tour because there's such a deep catalog. How do you do it? I mean, he could play his he could play Traveling Wilburys songs. He could play songs he wrote for other artists. You could probably bring it all in. He did play All Over the World from the Xanadu soundtrack, which was
You know, I
very that
Xanadu
was
was my
cool.
thing.
No, I love
Yeah,
it. Xanadu. My
I was like,
brother's
no Olivia Newton-John, but he could have still played Xanadu itself. But yeah, how cool it was that you got to do multiple shows on that tour, and the audience really responded to the Rooney songs as well. I mean, I thought it was a great pairing, and I thought they had a great night. But yeah, definitely, I wanted to get your take on Xanadu because that movie. The
Xanadu. I
movie and the music is just like, and then they go off on the Gene Kelly thing at the
I would think that the sort of plan was it's to just to play the crowd pleasers, to kind of play songs that get you off your out of your seat, get you moving, and keep it fun and peppy. And obviously, all over the world is like a very crowd. Like you want the crowd to sing with you, so it's sort of like it demands crowds to sort of engage with it. So maybe that they pick some of these songs for just like to pump you up.
Yeah.
But certainly, I thought the crowds really liked. They really responded well to the Rooney show. As you said, like I think yeah, there were probably a lot of people there that, like, hadn't heard us before, but they were digging the music because it sort of sounded like the stuff they grew up listening to, so it had a familiarity to them musically. But yeah, I thought, it's hard to get everyone, like, out of their seats rocking, but these were arenas, and it was full every night. It was like when we went on, it was pretty much packed. So it was a really, like, like, again, like, you can't ask for a better tour. Like, you walk out there, you got a huge crowd, you get to do your songs in this great environment. The production and the sound quality is as good as you could get it out there, so it was really, really special.
Just 2 more questions. One is, this is a sweet song podcast, so we talk about the sweet song, and that's when artists choose either something they've written or something by another artist, but I think today we should do 2, of course. We should do a zombie song, your sweet zombie song, something that just speaks to you and is, the one for you.
Yeah,
And then we'll circle back and do a Rooney one as well.
yeah. I would say for me, there's a song called Indication, that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about. Not a good pat on the back moment for the Hung Up on a Dream movie. It's not in the movie, so I'm not helping the case for people to know that song. But if everyone's listening, I would just put on Indication by the Zombies. It's got such a great, it's got such a 60s swinging kind of verse, but the chorus is just everything I love about songwriting in a way, because it goes to this one chord later in the chorus that just is such a great little curveball melodic moment. It gets a little darker. And then the outro of the song is actually I would say it's like a kind of a hard rock moment. It's like, it's an early 60s song, or mid 60s, but the outro of that song is like a full-blown dissonant, dark rock. It could be like a metal song. It's like they're so ahead of their time. If you go back and just listen to the outro and you'll go, "Oh wow, you're right." It's like there were bands really not it's a different sound for that time, especially coming from a band that had like pop hits. But I think it's also the early days of what became like Argent, because it's a little more proggy, and you could tell like Rod's just jumping, trying to, burst out of his skin, trying to get his prog rock on because he wants to just jam for 20 minutes. So no surprise he went and created the band he went and created next. But anyway, so yeah, that would be my song to hear, Indication by the Zombies.
Excellent. Have you told Rod how you feel about Indication?
We never got to talk about it. I should just reach out and be like, hey, I never told you, but Indication is so ahead of its time. Like it really is. It's so
Well, I've
I
got
would
some
say
lot of
these guys are really ahead of their time. That's a big statement about them.
Yeah, that's true. They were, and they still sound so fresh. So let's get your sweet Rooney song.
Yeah. So you want me to pick a song, in just any song that comes to mind?
No, what one that you think is kind of like, "Hey, I did really a good job on this one."
Yeah. I think yeah, I mean there's a song that I feel like I got to really experiment more with, and it's called I Should Have Been After You. And we played it on the ELO tour. That one I'll spotlight just because if I feel like I haven't really gotten back and I haven't explored more of that sound. But that song goes different places the way we've been saying ELO does and the Zombies do. I think I really got to like spread my wings a little bit more and push myself as a songwriter to like let that out. And I just think musically, I'm like proud of that song. Very musical song, the arrangements in it. John Fields, this music producer I worked with on it, was a very complimentary, like creative force for me. And it was really helpful to get the best out of that song. The background vocals, the singer of Jellyfish, if you know the band Jellyfish, but Sturmer did the backing vocals. I sang harmonies, but he also did some great harmonies on it. So that was like, I love Jellyfish so much. And like, they would be like our 90s version of like the Zombies in a way. And yeah, so it was great to get a little bit of that Jellyfish love on there, So yeah.
Perfect, good choice. I had actually written that one down to ask you about, so the fact that you picked it is pretty cool. Just because it does go different places within the song, you know, and especially when talking about zombies, because that's one thing that all their hits have done, so which is, you know, testament to the songwriting by Rod and Chris, and yeah. So, anything else you wanna tell us about the documentary for people who haven't seen it? One last
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave you with the Zombies documentary is out now on Apple and Amazon, which is if you guys are like, where can I see it? I some people wait for movies to go like on Netflix or but I don't if I'm just telling everybody like don't wait because like you should see it now on Apple and Amazon. Like we don't know if it'll be on Netflix. So you might just be kind of waiting, for nothing. So I would encourage you to, go check it out like tonight on Apple and rent it. And if you do like it, leave a review. It helps when you give a little review. It's a good thing for a film. But yeah, proud of the film, love the band. They really are supportive of our movie, so it feels really good that we got to make a film about a band that actually liked the movie we made. So proud of that relationship and the film we made. So yeah.
congratulations on the film and for
Thank
the
you.
EL tour, which I was able to see you perform.
Thank you.
Best of
Thanks for
luck
the
with everything. Nice to meet
awesome.
you and
Check
see
out
Yeah,
the
you
nice
new
to
soon.
meet you.
Zombies
Yeah.
documentary, Hung Up on a Dream, on Apple and Amazon now.